The Galactic arena shimmered under 1 billion neon banners, each one fluttering in artificial wind and ancient expectation. It orbited Vernox, 3 like a jewel affixed to a bloated god's crown, visible even from the ice moons where colonists prayed not to be noticed by the empires they fed. Spectators arrived in flocks, herds, gelatinous clouds, and personal wormholes. They came wrapped in silks that bled aroma, armored in sentient scales, or disguised as their own lawyers. War might be extinct on many worlds, but bloodsport, glorious, bureaucratic, heavily advertised, thrived. Today, they had gathered for the Intergalactic Bloodproof Combat Championship, a noble and thoroughly corrupt institution where gladiatorial combat settled matters of treaty clauses, trade tariffs, and planetary inheritance. Empires did not go to war. They sent champions, heroes, or in this case, an unsettling woman from Earth with a reputation that couldn't quite be verified, because half of it was filed under myth, and the other half had teeth. An enormous announcer's voice, translated into 87 languages and 17 smells, boomed across the stadium. On this cycle's ceremonial battlefield, we are honored to preside over the decisive challenge for the Diplomatic Entanglement Resolution Agreement, Sector 9, Clause 112. The Voltarian regime faces off against the Terran Confederacy. High stakes, higher tension, and as always, legally binding results. The crowd erupted in a thunderstorm of responses. Some hissed acid into the air. Others juggled their eyeballs. One species reproduced from excitement. Cleanup drones zipped overhead like frantic insects trying to keep the chaos sterile. A camera orb the size of a cantaloupe zoomed across the arena's rim, broadcasting the spectacle live to 8 galaxies and one time-looped village still trying to predict last year's results. Inside the staging vault beneath the arena floor, General Mira Ellis sat alone. She wore no armor, no sigils, just a long dust-colored coat and a pair of gloves that had once belonged to a sniper who believed in ghosts. Her boots were scuffed. Her eyes, however, were not. They were still, clinical, too quiet for someone about to enter a fight watched by trillions. Mira sipped tea, poorly brewed, faintly metallic. The heat didn't reach her mouth. Her tongue felt like it had been taught not to flinch. The silence around her wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. General. A voice crackled from the wall. A Vernoxian liaison with too many teeth and too little subtlety. Would you like the final statistical brief on your opponent? You have precisely 7 minutes to update your threat matrix. I've already met him, Mira said. You? When? In the hallway. He threatened to wear my intestines as a sash. Told me it was nothing personal. The voice hesitated. Ah, and your response? I told him I'd save him the trouble and gift-wrap them myself. He laughed. Do you often employ pre-fight sarcasm? Mira turned toward the wall, her expression as blank as glass. No. Usually I just win. Silence again. The voice disconnected. Outside, thunder from the crowd signaled that the Voltarian champion had arrived. Groxtal of the regime, 7 feet of bony muscle for arms, and a voice that could detonate glass in 3 dialects. He had once cracked the exoskeleton of a Flurm emissary with his bare hands, mid-speech. The Flurm later awarded him a diplomatic medal for brevity. Groxtal now stood in the center of the arena, flexing limbs like a war anthem. The Voltarian delegation watched from their skybox, a spiked chamber surrounded by ceremonial vines that required constant whispering. Betting odds scrolled in real time across the cloud screens. Groxtal was at 1:1. Mira sat at 9,000:1, right below accidental meteor impact. From the human delegation's box, a modest, poorly lit affair between the snack vendors and a malfunctioning gravity well, no one stood. No applause. Just a diplomatic aide chewing a protein bar that had long since expired. Mira stepped onto the platform that would lift her to the arena floor. She rolled her shoulders once, checked the friction on her gloves, then paused. In her mind's eye a memory flickered, a cold cabin, firelight flickering, the shadow of a woman who never aged, who taught with riddles and trained with knives. Mira had cried once during training, just once. The old woman had said nothing. She had simply handed Mira a mirror and whispered, "Don't ever fight what you are. Cut with it." The platform rose. The arena blazed with light. Groxtal grinned, splitting one of his secondary lips in anticipation. Mira blinked once at him, then at the crowd, then at the sky. A banner unfolded above them. Let the combat determine the clause. The rules were simple. One victor, one acknowledgement. No external weaponry. Internal modifications were fine as long as they weren't excessively sentient. Mira stopped 3 paces from Groxtal. He loomed like a thundercloud in flesh, dripping pre-battle sweat that sizzled where it touched the stone. "You are disappointing," he said in Old Regimian. Mira smiled faintly. "You have no idea." The announcer orb pulsed above them, casting an amber cone of light between the 2 combatants. "Combatants, identify yourselves for the record," the orb commanded. Groxtal, champion of the Voltarian regime, son of Ashbone, killer of the desert Leviathan. "Mira Ellis," she said, "raised by a dead woman who once broke an empire's spine." The crowd stirred. A few of the elder Flurm oozed something unreadable. "Begin," the orb said. Groxtal charged. It was not a subtle move. No finesse. No deception. Just raw power, like an avalanche wearing boots. His arms spun like threshers, each one capable of tearing steel. Mira didn't flinch. She didn't even move until the last possible second. Then she shifted. Not back, but sideways, precisely 12 degrees off his momentum vector. He missed by inches. The crowd gasped one section at a time, as the delay in sound caught up with their comprehension. Groxtal turned with a snarl, 3 limbs still ready. Mira stood 5 feet away, adjusting her coat. "I expected more," he hissed. "You expected easier," she replied. He lunged again. This time, she ducked beneath his reach, spun once, and tapped the back of his knee. It wasn't a blow. It was a question posed in muscle. What happens when you lose your balance? Groxtal stumbled. More murmurs now. The betting algorithms wavered. Mira stepped back, calm, breathing slow. Inside her, the implant activated, subtly. Not flashy. Not even visible. A single bead beneath her left rib calculated angles, neural drift, and hydration microlevels. "She's stalling," a Voltarian noble declared. A trick. But she wasn't. She was downloading him. Groxtal came again, faster now, frustrated. He began to adapt, shorter swings, less wind-up. Smart for a hammer. This time, one of his fists grazed her shoulder. Pain spiked, but she used it, redirected the momentum to spin into a low kick. Groxtal blocked. Just barely. He laughed. "You bleed." "Do you?" she asked. The crowd didn't know what to make of it. The match hadn't gone as expected. The expected roar of dominance, the spectacle of violence, it was absent. In its place was something quieter, like a surgeon drawing a scalpel before the first incision. Inside the human box, the aide finally sat forward. "She's not trying to win," he whispered. "She's demonstrating a flaw." Down in the arena, Groxtal began to sweat. Not the confident, gleaming kind. The nervous kind. His eyes scanned her, but her stance had no tells. She was too still, too precise. "Come," he snarled. "Fight me properly." She tilted her head. "This is properly." Then she moved. Not fast, inevitable. Her steps followed a pattern invisible to most. But in the third row, a Zarnathi monk suddenly stood, claws twitching. He saw it. He saw the logic in her placement. A feint to the left. Groxtal shifted to counter. But it wasn't a feint. It was a lure. He reached, overextended, and Mira dropped low, spun under, and brought her palm up into his secondary chest with exacting force. Not to break, to paralyze. He gasped. Air fled his lungs. Muscles locked. She turned, looked at the crowd. Her voice, when it came, was soft, but wired to every speaker. "Humans do not roar," she said. "We calculate." Groxtal collapsed. A silence fell, so heavy it had weight. The orb floated down, scanned Groxtal, and blinked red. Victory confirmed. Mira Ellis of Earth. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply walked away, boots echoing, leaving behind a champion on the floor and a galaxy unsure how it had just lost. The betting boards imploded. The Voltarian screamed. Somewhere, in a diplomatic enclave buried beneath ice, a galactic minister choked on her nectar. And in the far reaches of an old forest long-thought myth, a woman lit a candle and whispered, she remembers. Mira stepped into the tunnel. She did not look back. Not yet. The medical drones whirred in polite confusion. Groxtal, breathing but unmoving, was being carried off the field with the dignified reverence usually reserved for planetary relics or especially revered cheeses. His limbs twitched involuntarily, neural loops still recalibrating after the impact Mira had delivered, a precise 2-inch strike beneath his secondary sternum that disrupted 7 of his 10 motor pathways. No one knew quite what to say, except, of course, the bureaucrats. They always had something. This outcome was unanticipated, purred the Secretary of Clause Adjudication, her skin fluctuating through shades of orange as her language pack searched for the appropriate diplomacy. We will, of course, honor the outcome, but we do expect, how do you humans phrase it, a footnote. In a dark corridor behind the arena, Mira Ellis stood with her coat unbuttoned and her gloves tucked under one arm. The tea stain on her collar hadn't dried. Her expression didn't flicker. Not when approached, not when questioned, not when presented with 6 emergency forms and a ceremonial quill carved from a sentient shrub. No footnote, she said. A ruling was made. Let it stand. But the Voltarians will. They entered a combat clause. They lost. If they want to revisit their decision-making process, I suggest they start by reading the fine print. The secretary hesitated. Myra's gaze didn't sharpen, but it didn't need to. There was no malice in it, only an unblinking stillness that suggested she had already imagined and survived far worse conversations. In truth, Mira had fought this battle 100 times already. In silence. In planning rooms where male voices shouted and forgot she was present. In corridors where admirals whispered her name like it was an inherited debt. In the small hours of the night, when the tea tasted like solder, and every decision replayed itself in her mind with mechanical precision. The arena had been loud, but this quiet resistance, this expectation of apology, that was the real fight. She signed the last form with a single stroke. The secretary cleared her throat. Might I ask where you trained? No, Mira said and walked away. Outside, the viewing stations were looping replays of the match. Each angle was dissected, slowed down, captioned, and accompanied by blaring soundtracks. Experts argued over the legality of her counterstrike, over her expression, over whether the movement of her coat in the 5th minute suggested concealed tech. Every word a galaxy said about her now only served to prove how little it knew. In the human delegation's quarters, a narrow briefing room buzzed with updates. Messages from Earth, Luna, even Mars. Diplomatic congratulation packages were being assembled, though no one could decide whether Mira should be presented as a hero, an enigma, or an unfortunate accident. One aide suggested a parade. Another suggested a full internal review. Mira took neither suggestion seriously. She sat in the corner, reading the casualty report from a small pirate raid on Europa Station. None of the names were familiar. She read them anyway. The door opened. A man stepped in, older, stiff in the way bureaucrats get when their uniforms fit too well. Director Holland, Earth's primary diplomat for off-world negotiations, and the man who had authorized her entry into the tournament, albeit reluctantly. You made quite a scene. Was that a thank you? It was a caution. He crossed the room and offered her a datapad. On it, a cluster of headlines bloomed. Human Ghost Woman destroys Voltarian champion. Ellis. Tactical genius or bioweapon, Mira silent death. Ellis raises galactic security questions. Mira skimmed the headlines, then set the pad down. Let them talk, she said. You don't care? I do, but caring won't stop them. He paused. You made enemies today. I made enemies the day I graduated from New Jakarta Command and didn't smile for the press. This is just larger scale. Holland folded his arms. You're not what they expected. I'm not what you expected. He didn't argue. Across the station, in the Voltarian delegation chambers, the mood was less composed. Groxtal sat in a recovery tank, snarling at anyone who approached. His war handlers were already spinning the loss as sabotage. Rumors seeded. Nanotech poisoning, invisible drones, Jedi-like illusion fields. One general suggested Mira was not a human at all, but an experimental chimera left over from the Earth's first conflict era. Another whispered a name, Baba Yaga. Groxtal heard it and went still. The name had traveled far on rumors in war stories, from assassins who refused to accept payment because of what they saw. A woman never aging. A figure in the dark who taught humans how to move without moving. The tale had been dismissed. No one feared nursery rhymes. But Mira Ellis had moved like silence sharpened. And Groxtal, for all his rage, had not once seen her hesitate. In the following days, Mira was not called to fight again, but she remained on station. Technically, her mission was complete. Diplomatically, she had done what Earth asked. But unofficially, critically, her presence now bent the attention of the galaxy's old empires toward Earth in a way not seen since the Black Sun Protocol was first deployed. Holland met her on the balcony overlooking the arena. "You could leave now," he said. Mira sipped her new tea. "Still awful." "I could. We've had requests. From the Flurm, the Zarnathi Senate, even the Brokers Guild. They want interviews, debriefs, alliance talks. Rumors say the Voltarians have pulled their ambassador and doubled their fleet presence in the border systems." "Of course they have." "You're not worried?" "I'm calculating." He studied her. "And what do your calculations say?" "That fear makes people stupid. And stupid people do loud things." She turned back to the view. Below, the arena stood empty. The blood had been cleaned, the lights dimmed. Only the echo remained, bouncing between the hard surfaces like a ghost with good memory. "Why did you accept the assignment?" Holland asked suddenly. "We sent the offer as a formality. You were off-grid. No rank. No standing. Most thought you were retired." "I was," she said. "But some stories don't like staying buried." "You mean her." Myra's face didn't move, but something in the air did, an almost imperceptible tension, like a tightrope strung between atoms. "She taught me to end wars before they begin." "And this was a lesson?" Mira drained her cup. "This was a whisper. The shout will come later." Holland was silent for a long time. "You know," he said at last, "they called you the general with no fangs in the early reports." She smiled. "I know. Did it bother you?" "Not once." "Why not?" "Because it's never the fong you see that kills you." She turned and walked away, coat flaring gently, boots silent on the steel. The light behind her cut long shadows across the floor. Later that night, in a forgotten channel encrypted with a key that didn't exist, a message pulsed through a forest on a backwater planet known to no cartographer. Target reactivated. Results within prediction range. Phase 2 approaching. In the silence that followed, wind stirred the trees. And somewhere far from screens and echoes, a woman in a shawl stirred her tea with a finger and murmured to the shadows, "Good girl. Now show them how quiet gets loud." The arena changed shape for each match. Not because it needed to, but because someone on the design board thought unpredictability enhanced diplomatic negotiation. Today, the floor shimmered with active tectonic plates, manufactured instability. Jagged platforms rose and fell like lazy fangs, while gravity adjusted every 30 seconds just enough to cause a sprain but not a lawsuit. Mist rolled in from unseen vents. It smelled faintly of citrus and morning. Mira Ellis stood at the edge, arms folded, watching the terrain rearrange itself like a bored god. Her coat caught a gust from the artificial wind, flared once, then settled. A technician offered her a hydration bulb and a series of final briefings. She ignored both. Across the staging zone, her next opponent trained punches into a reinforced alloy column. Every strike rang like a cathedral bell. The force sensors couldn't register it properly. They shorted out after the fourth blow. His name was Raktor, a Bashiri Prime. 12 feet tall, For arms, the muscle mass of a freight loader and the demeanor of an avalanche. His culture revered combat as prayer and strategy as sin. Honor in their philosophy was earned only through visible bruises and decibel-heavy triumph. He hadn't lost a match since he was 6. Then again, most of his opponents hadn't survived long enough to tell the tale. Mira had read his file the night before in a dim corridor beside the station waste reclamation unit. It had taken her 3 minutes to understand his approach, 2 to find the flaw, and 5 to decide she didn't need to correct for it. She folded the file, tucked it under her boot, and let it stay there. Raktor had arrived with a ceremony band, drums carried by beings with long, mirror-like limbs. They chanted his name and painted his skin with dust that hissed on contact. He stood now in full ceremonial armor, breathing like a storm. Mira sipped her tea, now cold. The announcer's voice split the air. Galactic viewers and honorable delegates, welcome to the second match of the Terran Conflict Challenge sequence. Presenting our next combatants, Champion Raktor of the Bashiri Prime and Earth's General Mira Ellis. The crowd bellowed, some in applause, others in offense. One species simply exploded in joy. Mira squinted against the light, took a final glance at the terrain, then stepped forward. Raktor met her halfway. "You are very small," he said, "and you are very loud. It will not take long." "It never does," she replied. He blinked, confused. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile one wears when reading a map you already memorized. The platform lit up beneath them, signaling battle readiness. Grav maps shimmered in the air above, showing each faction's observers. Earth's feed lagged by 3 seconds, a deliberate delay. The Bashiri Prime feed displayed in high resolution, complete with biosign stats and heartbeat overlays. Raktor's heartbeat was steady. Myra's registered as unreadable. The announcer orb hovered above them, pulsing. "Begin." Raktor moved first, of course. He launched forward like a ballistic god, arms wide, steps deliberate and thunderous. He came not with caution, but confidence. Mira waited. When he reached her, she stepped left. Just 1 step. He missed by less than an inch. She reached up, touched the edge of his elbow with 2 fingers, and withdrew. His momentum carried him forward, off balance. Not enough to fall. Enough to notice. He turned with a snarl. "You mock me. I breathe near you," she said. "That seems to be enough." He roared and came again, faster, heavier. This time, the gravity shifted mid-charge, slowing him, but he compensated. Mira didn't. She didn't need to. Instead, she ducked low and swept her leg beneath the stance. His rear foot caught on a rising platform edge. His mass tilted dangerously. The audience held its breath. He recovered. Barely. Rage bloomed across his face. No one had ever made him adjust. Mira stepped back. This was never a fair fight. Not because of size. Not because of strength. But because she wasn't playing by the same rules. Raktor was here to win a spectacle. Mira was here to eliminate a threat. She didn't fight with force. She fought with margin. With patience so sharp it cut through strategy and found the flaw behind a warrior's rhythm. Raktor lunged again, his strikes now wide, testing range. Mira sidestepped, deflected, repositioned. Her footwork was ghost-like, visible only when the camera slowed to analyze. Blood finally appeared. His. A cut along his inner forearm from an edge she hadn't touched. He looked at it in disbelief. "Are you using forbidden tech?" "No," she said. "Just timing." His breath quickened. The feed spiked. Bashiri delegates shouted accusations. Mira turned toward the feed orb and raised an eyebrow. "Would you like me to stop?" Raktor came in one last time. Everything he had. No calculation. No defense. Just speed and mass and prayer. Mira pivoted, caught his momentum, redirected it with 1 step and 1 palm. He landed hard. Not broken, but stunned. She crouched beside him. "You're not weak," she said. "You were just taught to mistake loud for strong." Then she stood and walked away. The orb hovered, blinking. Victory, Mira Ellis. The crowd didn't cheer. It murmured. It wasn't the kind of win they liked. No blood. No crescendo. Just the slow realization that everything they believed about strength might be wrong. In the diplomatic chambers that followed, Mira was silent. Delegates circled like flies with vocabulary. Some praised her form. Others questioned legality. One accused her of hypnotic movement. She didn't respond to any of it. She sat in a corner with tea and a datapad. Her fingers flicked through maps of the upcoming outer colonies. 3 had gone dark. Not a concern yet, but that's how concern always started. Director Holland arrived late, breath shallow, jacket misaligned. You broke another champion. No, she said. He broke himself. I just timed it. You're terrifying. I'm tired. He sat beside her. They're considering sanctions. Earth is suddenly a strategic unpredictability. The Bashiri want a rematch. The Zarnathi Senate has requested a training exchange program with you as cultural consultant. No. To which part? All of it. He chuckled despite himself. I spoke to someone from the broker syndicate, he said. They want to know what you're being paid. I'm not. They think that makes you dangerous. They're right. She glanced sideways at him. You didn't bring me here to win. No. You brought me here to scare them. Yes. And now you don't know how to put me back in the box. He didn't reply. A silence fell between them. Not cold. Not tense. Just the mutual weight of knowing exactly what the other had gambled and lost. Mira stood. I need sleep. There's a reception tonight. No. She left without waiting for approval. In her quarters, dim and quiet, she stripped off the coat, laid it over the back of a chair, and washed her hands slowly. They smelled faintly of copper and ash. In the mirror, her reflection did not smile. She stared at her own face for a long time, then reached beneath the collarbone, pressed a small panel just beneath the skin. A flicker, a light, and then a voice. Raspy, soft. Child. I'm listening, Mira said. You haven't gone loud yet. I don't need to. You will. I hope not. The voice said nothing for a long time. Then, do they suspect? Not yet. Then you're behind schedule. The connection cut. Mira didn't speak again. She turned off the lights, laid back in silence, listened to the hum of the station around her, and dreamed of a forest no longer on any map, where a woman with smoke in her bones once said, a fair fight is a courtesy. A real fight is over before anyone understands what happened. The next morning, 6 new delegates filed requests to meet her. She declined them all. Outside, the arena was already reforming. New platforms, new lights. But the watchers now looked for something else, not just victory, but the shape of inevitability. They didn't understand her yet. They were beginning to realize they needed to. The council chamber wasn't built for moments like this. It had been designed for spectacle, tiered platforms, shimmering displays, voice translation in real time, an ambient scent diffuser set to subtle power. But there was no power in the room now. Only heat, suspicion, and the faint hum of too many species waiting for someone else to speak first. Mira Ellis stood at the edge of the center circle, hands loose at her sides. No weapon, no coat, just her, framed by light that tried and failed to make her look smaller. Before her sat 311 delegates, emissaries from old empires, ministers from client states, a few machines who had demanded voting rights after outlasting their creators. The Voltarians had taken their seat again, grim-faced, bandaged, freshly bitter. The Bashiri were present, if not fully attentive. And, at the edge, behind the security barrier, 2 diplomats from the broker syndicate hovered just out of commitment range. The moderator, a shimmering entity composed mostly of light, cleared its throat. Somehow. General Ellis, thank you for appearing. I didn't, she said. You summoned. I arrived. There's a difference. A ripple of unease. Not outrage. Not yet. The moderator adjusted its density. In the aftermath of your victories, several parties have raised questions. I'm listening. The Voltarian regime believes your tactics constituted covert warfare. The Bashiri Prime have lodged a grievance for cultural disrespect. The Flurm Collective remains undecided, but deeply offended in advance. Understood. And Earth has not issued a formal apology. Because we're not sorry. That did it. A wave of noise surged, claws tapping glass, beaks clicking, sonar pulses vibrating through stone. Somewhere in the back, a Zarnathi monk sighed like a disappointed thundercloud. The moderator raised its hands. General Ellis, the purpose of this council is peace through spectacle, controlled conflict, not systemic destabilization. Then you shouldn't have invited a human. Silence, deep and offended. I wasn't sent here to destabilize, Mira continued. I was sent here to fight by your rules. And I did. You just didn't expect the rules to lose. The Voltarian delegate stood, wrapped in ceremonial gauze, eyes glowing faintly. We demand review. No human of flesh and bone can outmatch Groxtal in sanctioned combat. You're hiding something. I'm hiding everything, Mira said. That's how I win. The delegate hissed. She admits deception. No, Mira replied calmly. I admit precision. You mistake silence for emptiness. It's a common imperial flaw. Director Holland rose from the back row. He looked like he'd aged in fast forward. Sweat clung to the collar of his shirt. Perhaps we can de-escalate. General Ellis is unconventional, but her victories fall within procedural tolerance. Mira glanced at him briefly. Not grateful. Just noted. The moderator pulsed again. There is a growing belief, General, that you are not acting on behalf of Earth, but on behalf of someone else. The word hung there, undefined but full of meaning. Not a government. Not an army. A myth. Mira said nothing. From the shadows, a new figure stepped forward, tall, robed, unfamiliar. A representative of the Galactic Ethics Tribunal, summoned for emergencies. It hadn't spoken in a decade. Now it moved with the weight of finality. General Ellis, do you deny prior association with the figure known colloquially as Baba Yaga? The room inhaled as one. Mira took a breath, slow and unremarkable. I don't deny it. Gasps. Audible fear from species with no mouths. Panic translated through pheromones, language chips, skin color shifts. She trained me, Mira said. She raised me. She taught me how to end a fight before it starts, and how to disappear after. That is a violation of every diplomatic code. No, that is your assumption that elegance is weakness, that a sharp edge must scream, that a soldier must bark, that strength is theatrical. Her voice did not rise. It didn't need to. The ethics tribunal stepped forward. If your actions are not sanctioned by Earth, then sanction me. A pause. I don't serve Earth, she continued. Not anymore. They asked me to come here because they forgot what fear looked like. I reminded them. And you. And everyone else watching. She turned slowly, scanning the room. You mistake Earth's peace for disarmament. You think because we trade poetry and plant gardens on Mars that we've gone soft. But peace is not the absence of sharpness. It's the choice not to use it. She stepped forward, into the light. Every spotlight adjusted, unsure what to do. I didn't come to make war, she said. I came to show you what war looks like when it doesn't need permission. The Flurm delegate collapsed into vapor. Two Bashiri guards raised weapons before being restrained. The Zarnathi simply bowed, the deepest of their culture's gestures. The brokers vanished before anyone saw them move. The moderator flickered. You will be detained. You can try. Mira tapped the back of her neck. The lights cut, not just in the chamber. Across the station, the orbiting satellites, the council feeds. Every translation chip stalled. For 10 full seconds, the galaxy blinked. When the lights returned, Mira stood exactly where she had been, but something in the air had shifted. Behind her, every data feed now displayed a message in clean, white text. You were warned. She was a whisper. Now she's a storm. The chamber erupted. Mira walked. No one stopped her. Even Holland, wide-eyed and pale, stepped aside. In the corridors beyond, security bots flickered and shut down as she passed. She didn't run. She didn't hurry. She moved like someone who had already mapped the exit 20 moves ago. By the time ships were scrambled, she was gone. By the time delegates agreed to condemn her, her signature had vanished from the system. And by the time Earth received the Council's accusations, their diplomats had already prepared a single reply. She acted without state endorsement. We apologize for any discomfort, but we do not deny her. Far from the Council, beyond charted lanes, on a planet known only by myth, a woman stood at a kettle, stirring nothing. She didn't use her hands. The shadow beside her whispered. She never needed to, said Baba Yaga. She could have killed them all. She gave them the mercy of fear. The forest around them listened, thick with stories. Above, the stars shifted. She'll be hunted, the shadow said. She always has been, the old woman replied. But this time, she left them with something worse than injury. What's that? Doubt. Mira, aboard a stolen diplomatic courier, removed her gloves. One finger twitched, sore from restraint. She looked out the viewport. Space rippled with silence. She wasn't done. She was just beginning.